Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome back. It's nice to be here. I'm feeling really good. It's currently Saturday morning, and my podcast editor is a godsend. Tomorrow I am 24 weeks pregnant. It's pretty crazy. I feel really, really good. I had a little episode earlier this week where I had some really bad round ligament pain and couldn't walk for a couple days, and I was a little panicked thinking, oh my gosh, what if I can't walk this whole pregnancy? But that ended up not being the case, so I suppose I am lucky. In this episode, I want to give you a pretty strong idea of what intuition feels like in case you feel like you can't discern between the two. To be honest, they can often feel totally identical. And the reason I want to bring this up is because the most common questions I ever get asked are, how do I know whether it's just relationship anxiety or a sign that I just need to leave this relationship? Or a question like, is this feeling my intuition telling me something is wrong? What if it's not relationship anxiety, but it's really my intuition telling me this isn't right? I've even been asked, Natalie, have you ever had a client jump into this work with you and then discover they had to leave their relationship? By far, this is the biggest fear that most of my clients who are struggling with relationship anxiety have, that somehow through this work, they're going to discover some terrible, unseeable truth about themselves or others. Now, here's the reality. I think a lot of coaches are going to tell you that that is impossible. And I don't want to say that that's impossible. And I say that not to freak you out, but just to get you to sit up in your chair and take some responsibility for the outcomes in your life. The reality is sometimes there are real things we need to take a look at, and our anxiety is telling us to look at them, and we might not want to. So I want to tell you a few stories, and they may scare you, but I want you to stay all the way to the end of the podcast because I'm going to offer you a really strong perspective that I think is going to shift your perspective on what intuition is and isn't. And at the same time, I think it's going to give you a bit of hope. So you might have heard my story last year. Actually, 1 year ago today, I got pregnant for the first time, but that ended up miscarrying. And I did a whole podcast on it, actually. It was titled, May I Tell You About My Miscarriage? And it was a very heartfelt episode. And even if you're not pregnant or planning on being pregnant, I recommend listening to that episode because it's ultimately a story about intuition gone wrong. It's a story about heartbreak and grief and death and ultimately uncertainty. There was so much uncertainty throughout the pregnancy, but as soon as I found out that I was going to lose my pregnancy, I had to wait weeks until it actually commenced. And that was one of the most nerve-wracking, scary times in my life. And so if you want to hear a story about uncertainty, listen to that one. But the long story short, I had this feeling of confidence in my body. And I thought it was a very intuitive kind of confidence. And my interpretation was that this baby is definitely carrying to term. I'm super healthy. I feel great, until I wasn't. And that was really humbling. And it brought my intuition into question, because I thought, well, if that wasn't intuition, then what is, right? So that's one story. Another one is, I once had a client, a one-on-one client, that had been having relationship anxiety about her long-term boyfriend. And through the work that we did, she came to peace and acceptance about her relationship and was ready to proceed. And just when she really took ownership and cleaned up her side of the street and felt at peace inside of herself, it's almost like that anxiety that she had been holding transferred to him. And he suddenly came and confessed to her that he'd cheated on her. And all of a sudden, her anxiety made more sense, and her self-trust in her anxiety was massively restored, and she actually did end up ending the relationship. But the beauty is that she did so out of love. She didn't do so out of anger. She was so at peace within herself, and this allowed for her to really end the relationship from a place of integrity and self-trust. Another story, this is my last one. I found out about 3 years ago that in the time that I had relationship anxiety, which was maybe 7 years ago, that my husband had been having a really unhealthy relationship with pornography. And this was actually, he came clean to me about this after I had started Anxious Love Coach. So if you only listened to like episode 1, I didn't know about it at that time. And the truth is, a lot more made sense after he confessed that to me. But kind of like my client, by then I'd done so much work on cleaning up my side of the street and cleaning up my traumas and healing my pain, things that did not have anything to do with him, that did contribute to my anxiety in the relationship. So when he came clean to me as a human, I felt like I had the tools to meet him there and move forward. Now, I chose to stay because I thought, well, I got my own vices too. And I really respected him for coming clean. And for me, it wasn't a deal breaker, but for someone else, it might have been, and I don't judge. But him coming clean to me and me realizing that in the time that I was having really intense relationship anxiety, he was also struggling with porn. This was very validating for me. But it does make you wonder, was it the porn causing my anxiety? Or was my anxiety leading to behaviors on my end that drew my partner to the screen? To this day, I don't know. And guess what? I honestly don't think I need to, and I don't care. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because anxiety and intuition can be intertwined and very similar in feeling. But at the same time, I want to say that intuition is not necessarily a predictor of outcomes. You feeling confident in your relationship does not mean it's going to succeed, and you having doubts about your relationship does not mean it's going to fail. All it is a message from the deeper subconscious, which actually is based on past experiences you've had, that kind of create those nudges based on what deeper parts of you want. So that said, in my opinion, and I think this is where I might differ a little bit from some relationship anxiety coaches, is that I think anxiety can be intuition. And I have said that, I've actually said the opposite years ago. And that just goes to tell you that so much of this work is contradictory, and no wonder you're so confused. But here's the thing. While anxiety can be an intuition, it's not always. That's why I find the question, is it anxiety or is it intuition, to be a really frustrating false dichotomy. It feels like it can only be one or the other. I feel the same about the question, is it just anxiety or am I in the wrong relationship? Because it implies this either-orness, and that the answer somehow can't be, well, your anxiety is valuable and important and worth looking into, and you can still be in the right relationship. The way that these questions are positioned makes it seem that it can't be a little bit of both. I am confident in my choice of partner, but that does not mean that I will never feel anxiety in my relationship. And that also doesn't mean that circumstances can't change someday and lead to a demise of the relationship. This is why I tell my clients, please don't put me and my relationship on a pedestal, because I will disappoint you at some point. At some point, you're going to discover something about me that you really don't like, and it's going to make you question your trust in me. And that's because I'm not you, and I hold different values than you. So what I tell my clients is, don't follow me. Don't follow my words. Follow the direction that I've been pointing all this time, which is where I get my wisdom from, where I get my spaciousness from, where I get my calmness from. The practices that I teach are designed to bring you into a certain state, a certain point of consciousness, a certain reference point inside of your body and your mind and your spirit. And when you access that, you won't need my content. You won't need to listen to me, because you'll have access to a point of deep spaciousness and self-trust and confidence. And you won't need other people telling you what to do. Because guess what? If you do every single thing I tell you to do, at some point, it's not going to work. And you're going to think, wow, Natalie's a fraud. And you'd be correct. Because there is no step 1, step 2, step 3 for overcoming relationship anxiety. There really isn't. Some of you guys are going to stumble across your own ways of doing this. I just think it's important to be honest about that. I will say that I rarely get relationship anxiety now, because I've gotten really good at reading myself and my inner state and being able to interpret what I'm actually feeling and why. And B, this is the second part that I don't think is talked about enough, being able to communicate that to, I've gotten really good at communicating that to another person. I know I'm good at those things. And for the most part, I can tell when my side of the street is clean, where I stop, and where my husband and his work begins. That's really helpful, because I think when we're feeling anxious, whether it's relationship related or not, this gets very messy and very clouded, and can result in controlling other people and us positioning ourselves as a victim when we're actually not, and we're not taking responsibility for ourselves, and we're trying to control things we have no control over, and it's just really, really messy. I feel confident in my ability to create separation around this because of the exercises I've done and do and teach my clients. And because I have that trust in my own perceptions and in the way I communicate those perceptions, I'm able to access and trust what I believe is intuition very well. And that does not mean I think I'm a psychic. It only means that I trust how I perceive things, but I understand that they are perceptions. And I trust what comes my way. I trust my husband's and my abilities to handle what comes my way. Intuition is something you have access to when you have a point of reference for spaciousness and what self-trust is inside. This is kind of my quick formula. If you're in a genuinely unsafe, urgent situation, like there's a tiger chasing you, or your partner is holding a baseball bat to you, making threats, your fear response is legit. Run. Now, if you are not in any real danger in the moment, then this sense of urgency is a false one. That's my quick formula. Now, that does not mean that any anxiety that you experience in a safe situation means your relationship is totally fine and that you should ignore it. That's not true. But it just means that there's something that you're not seeing in the dynamic. Something is unconscious. And could it be a major red flag? Yes. It might be that you are going to embark in a lifetime's worth of suffering if you don't address this somehow. But it also could mean that if you do address it, you could find out some really valuable information that actually could solidify your relationship. It could be as simple as an emotion you're not giving yourself permission to feel. It could be a request, a desire that you're not giving yourself permission to voice. Maybe it's because you have the words to express it, but you're afraid to express it. Or you're not afraid to express it, but you don't know how to articulate it in a way that your partner can receive gracefully. So these are the kind of tricky things. Anxiety is like a check engine light on your car. It tells us information, but it doesn't tell us all the information. Putting like duct tape over the check engine light so that you don't see it is ignoring it and pretending it's not there. That's not good, because that check engine light would be really valuable information, right? Maybe you have a flat tire, or your oil needs to be changed, or there's something you need to take your car to a mechanic and see what's up. It might not blow up in your face in 5 seconds, but you might have an issue 6 months down the line if you don't get that checked out, right? It's the same thing. But at the same time, the other extreme, if you're not putting tape over the check engine light, the other extreme is panicking that your car is about to explode in 5 seconds. Well, that's not helpful either, because that's unlikely. we need to learn how to sort of become mechanics of our own inner experience, and at the same time learn how to communicate our problems to others so that we can collaborate in solving them. I used to think, and I even used to think this when I started Anxious Love Coach, that about 5 years ago, when I first discovered consciousness exercise, which is a practice I teach both in my programs, Both Feet In, and also in my upcoming women's group, Anxious to Spacious, when I first learned it, I was so ecstatic, because I realized that there is no emotion that is too big for me. I can just process it and it'll pass through my body and go away. And I actually didn't need to do anything about my emotions. This was so liberating, because it meant that I didn't have to confront anyone. I could just absorb people's emotions and just discharge them, and they would eventually go away. But the problem is, I took this exercise, this somatic practice, to such an extreme that I just became a doormat, and I didn't know how to use consciousness exercise as a practice that would actually teach me how to confront people when it was necessary. If you're just doing somatic work without letting it change you and change how you interact with people in the world, you're just a doormat. So that's why I say there's two parts. There's the inner work, but then there's the outer work. If you're just processing all the time, but you're letting people walk all over you, you're doing consciousness exercise too much. You don't need to spend 2 hours a day processing what happened in your day because you can't set boundaries, okay? Ideally, your somatic practice enlivens you, it enriches you, it gives you information so that you know how to interact with people and tell people off when you need to. You need to know when to tell someone to fuck off. You need to tell someone, no, you can't do that. You need to know how to ask for what you want. You need to know how to have a conversation and get in the mud with people. It's not enough to just meditate your hard feelings away. Don't put duct tape over your check your anxiety light, but also your initial thought of what might be wrong could be inaccurate. You got to kind of get under the hood and become a mechanic of your inner world and figure out, okay, what's going on? What's this anxiety trying to tell me? And learn how to communicate that to others, especially if they're the ones involved in the anxiety. So please don't get stuck in this false dichotomy of either wrong relationship or the other, which is nothing is wrong, I'm just crazy. No. What if it's neither of those things? So here's an example. A couple days ago, I was experiencing a ton of anxiety, and this might be good for you to know that I still have anxiety sometimes. The difference is I trust it, because I suddenly had this thought that my husband and I might not be on the same page in terms of the birth experience that I want to have in January or February. I had this perception based on some things he had said and done in the past. And I don't know, is it just anxiety, or is it my intuition that I'm in the wrong marriage? Well, it turns out, you guys, the answer is neither. We have to talk, okay? So I came to my husband, Preston, and I said, listen, I'm having some anxiety about the birth. Is now a good time to share and get your perspective and chat? And this is important. You need to, don't go barging in when they're in the middle of work. Tell them, this is what I'm thinking about and worried about. Is now a good time? So be respectful. And, he happened to say yes. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but basically here's what I shared with him. I said, here's what I'm imagining. Here's these images I'm thinking of in the future. I'm imagining this horrific scenario. And when I imagine that, I feel these sensations in my body. I feel a pounding heart, my stomach drops, I feel a knot in my chest, and I feel really scared and I feel really angry when I imagine those future events. And I've also, on Instagram and on Reddit, read a ton of accounts of women having this thing happen to them and go wrong. And while it seems to me like you think we're on the same page, I'm not so convinced because I've spent hours reading these stories and I haven't witnessed you doing the same. So I've made this assumption that you don't know about it. Now, there's a chance I'm going to be delirious in our birth process. So I kind of need to know that you'd be advocating for my best interests, but I don't know that you know what my best interests are. I'm worried that just handing you the keys like that is like handing you the keys to a car that you've never driven. Now, that conversation was really tense and scary, and yet it was so productive. And by the end, I felt really confident that he knew what I wanted and did perceive that we were on the same page. That said, he also used the analogy of a mixed martial arts or MMA fight coach knowing when to throw in the towel when his boxer is getting his ass kicked to dangerous levels. Sometimes that coach throws in the towel too soon or too late. He told me, I'm going to fight for your best interests, but I need you to leave some room for having grace for me in case he made a mistake. And that was our agreement. And guess what? My anxiety evaporated. So I do believe in this case that my anxiety was my intuition telling me something was off, that something was lurking in the shadows that I needed addressed. But I no longer believe that off feeling means wrong relationship, only that there are some things lurking in the shadows that need to come to light, either within him, within me, or within the dynamics of our marriage. And this is where courage comes in. Now, please don't confuse courage with fearlessness. I am not fearless. I have a lot of fear. It's just I do things scared all the time. It's choosing to do this scary thing in the name of your values, which is integrity. And that doesn't mean telling off your partner. A lot of people think being honest means being blunt. No, it doesn't. That's just being cruel. And it means you need to spend more time with yourself to discover what your brutal honesty is covering up, because chances are you're not being vulnerable enough if you're being brutally honest. In my opinion, anybody can fly off the handle. That's easy. It's difficult to know how to read yourself so well and to be able to articulate it in a way that your partner can receive. So that way you guys can get on the same page. Anxiety is not automatically a sign you're in the wrong relationship. It's a sign you're currently blind to something. But you need to be willing to step into the shadows and go where most people might not be willing to go. It's really hard to make decisions when you're swimming in chaotic fear and unable to responsibly articulate your inner experience to someone. This took me years to acquire the skill sets for, and I'd love to speed up that process for you. All right, now listen, due to some feedback I received, I had a group program that I ended up scrapping and revamping. It's a women's group program. We start on October 24th, and it's called Anxious to Spacious. And if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you about it, because if you're listening to this and you're like, Natalie, you're in my head, I want you to learn an exercise that just really changed my life and just gave me so much bang for my buck. I learned this one exercise and I learned 20 different things. And I'm still not done studying this exercise. I still do it and I'm still finding nuances to it because it's simultaneously so simple and yet so complex and so rich. It's just, to me, I've done a lot of embodiment practices. I've worked with a lot of coaches. I've done a lot of courses. And I hate to say it, but for me personally, consciousness exercise has been the best. It gets so much done in so little time. So I want to tell you about Anxious to Spacious because we're going to be learning consciousness exercise for 6 weeks in Anxious to Spacious. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to be doing. We're going to meet weekly for 6 Saturdays to study this exercise, and it's going to help you step out of overthinking. At least that's my intention. And consciousness exercise utterly broke my brain in the best way because I was able to finally witness my body and my mind long enough to see that so much of it was a program that was not me running it. It's like an unconscious, subconscious thing. And it also helped me step outside of it where I could access real love and intuition. And please know that real love is very fierce. Real love is not attachment. It doesn't mean staying together and being delusional. It means knowing where you stop and where the other person begins. It means accepting yourself and other people as they are. incompatibilities becoming crystal clear, and having an easier time getting to the bottom of things and on the same page because you're clear with yourself and you know that your side of the street is clean. When you're good with yourself, you like yourself, you know yourself, you trust yourself, you might start making some positive changes in your life. Your partner will generally respond in kind by either becoming a better version of themselves, maybe with a little protest, or they're going to run for the hills. And it's going to become very clear that this isn't going to work out. You won't even be wishy-washy and wavering. It'll just become really clear to you, especially if you have that reference point for spaciousness and self-trust. This program will also indirectly help you understand yin and yang dynamics and step out of codependency, because there's not going to be any more space for you to operate from victimhood in your relationship. My hope for you is that, as I did, you're going to discover more of who you actually are and the love that you are, and stop seeking completeness from others, because you're going to tap into that infinite well of love and aliveness and the true self already flowing through you, always has been, always will be. In a nutshell, you're going to be able to be a better partner while also taking less shit from people. It's a great combination. So, Anxious to Spacious is for women. I'm running it as a group because consciousness exercise is actually best done with a buddy. I do teach it in my self-paced solo self-study course, Both Feet In, as a sort of guided meditation for those who want to go through the process alone, or maybe don't have time or energy or money or a level of commitment to do a group program or one-on-one with me. But I always thought that doing this work solo can only take you so far, because so much of relationship anxiety work requires us to overcome our fears of seeing and being seen by others. It's an intimacy practice. Relationship anxiety often comes with a fear of intimacy, which means we need to interact with people. We can't do it all alone. So this is exactly what I'm going to be asking you to do in Anxious to Spacious. I'm going to be teaching you consciousness exercise, which actually is a partnered exercise. And I don't mean your romantic partner. I mean, come to the group and I'm going to partner you up. I'm going to be teaching you these exercises, and you can buddy up, and we'll be going into this deep study of this practice in the context of relationships, anxiety, and communication. I'll be putting you in breakout rooms to feel and express your true feelings and process them. And you're also going to be witnessing people doing the same thing without stepping in to comfort or rescue them. This is actually really difficult. And get this, you're going to feel what it's like to be your partner who's in a relationship with you without jumping into their body, because you're going to see a lot of yourself in other people. And I think that's going to be really healing and also humbling for you. There is so much perspective to be had. I'm going to be floating through these breakout rooms to supervise and support. And like I said, consciousness exercise is a tricky practice that you can't really just learn in one workshop. And that's why I'm hosting it for 6 weeks, and I'm offering a lot of supplementary reading materials and things like that. But it's a simple course, only 6 weeks plus a welcome call that we're going to have. I think you're going to get a lot out of it if you find this podcast episode resonant with you. If you are interested, the link to join Anxious to Spacious, which starts October 24th for our first welcome call, go to the show notes and click that link and join Anxious to Spacious. Now, if you look at the calendar, the schedule that I offer, and you can't make it, or it's out of your budget or something like that, it's not for you at this time, or if you prefer self-study and self-paced, then I'd recommend my self-study course, Both Feet In, because you're going to find consciousness exercise in there too. And you can even still find a buddy by emailing my team at support@anxiouslovecoach.com, and they're going to help you find a partner. But just know you're kind of going to be winging it without my support. I still think it's better than nothing. Whenever you can, come join one of my groups, because I'm going to be running them periodically. Just know I am going to be going on maternity leave, so this is going to be my last group program in quite a while, probably until, I want to say, May or June of 2025. So this is kind of your last chance to jump on a group program with me, and my heart's in it. I hope you can make it. All right? So just remember that intuition only works if you trust yourself. If you don't, we need to get to that point of self-trust first, because until then, it's really a lot of trauma fogging up your ability to access intuition. Because who is this you that you are trusting? Are you trusting life, or are you trusting your trauma? Are you trusting the fear-based you, your lust, your people-pleasing? We've got so many contradictory parts. How do you know which one is the real you? So this is why I believe it's essential to have a reference point beyond all your parts for spaciousness, beyond all your emotions. So in Anxious to Spacious, I'm going to help you bypass your thought loops, your old stagnant, sticky feelings, so you can remember who you are beyond your story and feel the pulse and the miracle of life moving through you. Only then are you going to remember what fierce true love is. And newsflash, it's not longing or puppy love or attachment to someone or something. And that is where you will make decisions not ruled by irrational fears. So come join me on October 24th. I'll include the link in the show notes. And that's it. I am going to go get my nails done. I hope you have a wonderful week and rest of your day. And I will catch up with you next week. Bye for now.
Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.